August 24th, 1992, Homestead, Florida. Winds of 165 miles per hour. The peaks even hit 177, and then the instruments failed.
A painful experience. The sand is hitting us so hard that it feels like BB's hitting your skin.
A central pressure of 922 millibars, lower than most Category 5 hurricanes ever recorded. 125,000 homes destroyed. 250,000 people left with nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go!
Took off roofs, blew out windows, overturned trees. It looks like a war zone.
$26.5 billion in damage, the costliest natural disaster in American history at the time. And 4 days later, not a single federal relief team had arrived. But what makes this storm different is that it wasn't supposed to happen at all. This is the story of the storm that shouldn't exist. To understand what happened on August 24th, 1992, you have to go back to what South Florida believed about hurricanes. The last major hurricane to make a direct hit on the Miami area had been in 1965. For nearly 3 decades, South Florida had existed in a kind of meteorological grace period, watching storms form, watching them track toward the coast, watching them turn away or weaken before they could do serious damage. A generation of residents had grown up with hurricanes as a theoretical threat, something that happened to other places. Something the weather maps showed moving toward you and then curving harmlessly out to sea. There was something else. The 1992 Atlantic hurricane season had been forecast as below normal. Only 7 named storms were predicted for the entire year. Andrew was the first named storm of the season, and for most of its life, it looked like it would be nothing. A weak, disorganized disturbance drifting across the Atlantic, the kind of system that forecasters monitor with mild interest and little concern. That was about to change in a way that nobody was prepared for. A tropical wave emerges from the west coast of Africa on August 14th, 1992. It becomes a tropical depression 2 days later and is named Tropical Storm Andrew on August 17th. For the next 3 days, Andrew drifts west across the Atlantic in an environment hostile to development. Wind shear tears at its structure. The storm cannot organize. Its central pressure rises, a sign of weakening. By August 20th, Andrew looks so disorganized that meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center begin to question whether it will survive at all. The Hurricane Center makes a decision to keep monitoring. It proves to be the most consequential weather decision of the year. On August 21st, Andrew encounters something that changes everything. A nearby low-pressure cell shifts the atmospheric environment around the storm, reducing the wind shear that had been tearing it apart. Andrew begins to reorganize, slowly at first, then with alarming speed. By August 22nd, Andrew is a hurricane. By August 23rd, it is a Category 5. In less than 48 hours, a storm that was nearly dead has become one of the most powerful Atlantic hurricanes ever observed. Its maximum sustained winds reach 175 miles per hour. Its central pressure drops to 922 millibars, among the lowest ever recorded in an Atlantic hurricane. Meteorologist Lixion Avila, on duty at the National Hurricane Center, later says that what he witnessed during those 48 hours was unlike anything in his career. The storm that nobody was watching had become the storm that nobody could stop, and it is heading directly for the most densely populated stretch of South Florida. Evacuation orders go out. Residents board up windows and load cars. The problem is that South Florida's highways, built for commuting, not mass evacuation, quickly become gridlocked, and the timing is deeply unfortunate. Andrew is fast, it is compact, and it is moving at a speed that leaves people far less time to get out than the maps suggest. Forecasters at the National Hurricane Center issue warnings that are among the most serious ever written for the Florida coast. But there is something unusual about Andrew's forecast track that adds a layer of deadly uncertainty. The storm is projected to hit the Miami metro area, a massive urban center with millions of residents. At the last moment, Andrew dips slightly south. Instead of downtown Miami, the eye wall makes landfall near Homestead, a smaller community of about 26,000 people, home to Homestead Air Force Base and surrounded by agricultural land and mobile home parks. That last-minute jog saves Miami. At 5:05 a.m. on August 24th, 1992, the eye wall of Hurricane Andrew crosses the Florida coast near Homestead as a compact, violent Category 5 hurricane with sustained winds of 165 miles per hour. A dropsonde, an instrument dropped from an aircraft into the center of the storm, records a central pressure of 922 millibars at landfall, one of the lowest pressures ever recorded at landfall on American soil. Well, this is not a sprawling, massive storm, like Katrina or Sandy, whose wind fields stretch hundreds of miles in every direction. Andrew is compact. Its hurricane force winds extend only about 30 miles from the center, but within that compact core, the winds are concentrated to an almost incomprehensible degree. It is less like a large hand pressing down on the landscape and more like a fist driving straight through it. The results are unlike anything South Florida has ever experienced.
And here are the effects of Andrew as he begins to arrive here on Miami Beach. You can see the palms blowing, and then over here, you can see the sand. It's almost like a blizzard, a snowstorm of sand.
Homestead is essentially erased. More than 99% of the community's mobile homes are completely destroyed. Not damaged, not displaced, destroyed. Their frames twisted into unrecognizable shapes, their contents scattered across fields and roadways for miles. The Homestead Air Force Base, one of the largest military installations in the Southeast, is devastated.
An F-16?
Brian, it's like someone dropped a bomb on this area. I just can't even conceive it yet.
Hangars collapse. Aircraft are destroyed or thrown from their stands. The base, which has stood for decades, is so severely damaged that the Air Force will ultimately decide not to fully rebuild it as an active base.
It looks like an Air Force base that one might imagine was involved in some kind of a nuclear blast. I mean, the damage here is just almost beyond description. I mean, every single facility here has some major structural damage to it.
An institution that survived World War II, the Cold War, and decades of Florida's hurricane seasons is effectively ended by a single morning. Across South Miami-Dade County, the damage is staggering in a way that defies easy description. It is not the surge that does most of the damage, something unusual for a major hurricane. It is the wind.
Just listen to this wind. I'm going to hold the microphone right up to the open window.
Pure, concentrated, mechanical wind that strips roofs, collapses walls, lifts vehicles, debarks trees, and reduces well-built structures to bare slabs. Rows of concrete power poles, each weighing thousands of pounds, fall in sequence like dominoes. A boat is deposited in the middle of a residential street. One survivor opens his kitchen cabinets after the storm and finds fish inside. More than 125,000 homes are destroyed or severely damaged. More than 82,000 businesses are affected. 31 public schools are damaged or destroyed. 3,300 miles of power lines are brought down. 250,000 people lose their homes. The damage reaches an estimated $26.5 billion, making Andrew, at the time, the costliest natural disaster in American history. The human experience of Hurricane Andrew is one of absolute darkness and absolute noise.
A lot of the roofing around the particular structure we're in getting peeled off. We've heard some more glass shattering. Again, we haven't been with power for a couple of hours now, and the winds have just dramatically come up.
And then, when the eye passes, a silence so complete that survivors describe it as the most terrifying moment of the entire storm.
Real difficult to explain. You've got to go through it to realize what it is.
Jorge Zamanillo, who would later become director of the History Miami Museum, drives south toward Homestead the morning after the storm to check on family. He describes a landscape without reference points. No street signs, no traffic lights, no landmarks. The farther south he drives, the worse it becomes. By the time he reaches the hardest hit areas, he says, there is destruction everywhere he looks, as far as he can see, in every direction. An unnamed woman sheltering in her home during the storm is recorded saying, "I started to scream, 'God, please, don't kill me. God, don't kill me, please.'" One man, surveying his street afterward, tells a reporter, "There's nothing. There's nothing left. There's no more Homestead." One of the most haunting details to emerge from the aftermath is the silence. Before Andrew, Homestead was shaded by massive ancient tropical trees, live oaks, mahogany, gumbo limbo, the kind of trees that take decades to grow and define the character of a neighborhood. Andrew stripped them bare. The morning after the storm, survivors describe stepping outside to no bird song, no insect noise, no rustling leaves, just the flap of loose debris and the smell of raw pine from splintered wood. The sound of a landscape that had been made completely empty. Then, the waiting began. The storm clears South Florida by mid-morning on August 25th. Within hours, aerial surveys reveal the scale of what has happened. What they show is beyond anything the emergency management system is prepared for. Entire communities have been erased. Tens of thousands of people are living in rubble in August heat with no water, no food, no power, and no communication. The roads are impassable. The infrastructure is gone. The federal response is slow, deeply, critically, unacceptably slow. 4 days pass. Food, water, does not arrive. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, struggles to coordinate a response to a disaster whose scale has overwhelmed every existing emergency plan. Survivors describe conditions that feel less like a natural disaster in the United States and more like a war zone in a developing country.
It looks like a war zone.
So when you hear people talk about this being like a war zone, it truly does look like a war zone in more ways than one. It's not just the physical destruction, it's what the people here are going through as well. These people are totally shell-shocked.
People are fighting over ice. Families are sleeping in parking lots. Looters move through neighborhoods that have no police presence because the roads into them are still blocked. On August 27th, 3 days after landfall, Kate Hale, the director of emergency management for Dade County, stands in front of television cameras and says what everyone in South Florida is thinking.
I am a local emergency manager who is trying to get resources into a devastated community. All I know are a lot of people are saying, why aren't we doing more? We're doing everything we can. Where in the hell is the cavalry on this one?
The clip airs nationally. It becomes the defining statement of the Andrew disaster. Within hours of Hale's appearance, the federal response accelerates. President George H.W. Bush flies to Florida. The military deploys. The National Guard moves in. Tent cities are established in Homestead and Florida City, but the damage to the federal government's reputation and to FEMA's credibility has already been done. The organization that is supposed to be America's first line of defense in a catastrophic disaster has been found badly wanting. Andrew would become the reason FEMA was fundamentally restructured in the years that followed. It would become the reason Florida rewrote its building codes from the ground up. It would become the reason an entire generation of emergency managers in the United States changed how they thought about response timelines, resource prepositioning, and what it actually means to be prepared for a Category 5 hurricane. 13 years later, when Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast, Kate Hale's words would echo across every newscast. The cavalry had not arrived for Andrew. It would not arrive for Katrina either. By the time Andrew dissipates after making the second landfall in Louisiana on August 26th, the total death toll stands at 65 people. The damage reaches $26.5 billion. The name Andrew is retired by the World Meteorological Organization in 1993. It will never be used again for an Atlantic storm. In Homestead, the rebuilding takes years. The mayor estimates that roughly half of the town's population simply leaves, taking whatever insurance settlements they can get and relocating north. The Homestead Air Force Base is downsized to a reserve facility, taking thousands of military jobs with it. The ancient tropical trees that defined the neighborhood never grow back during the lifetimes of the people who lost them. The city that rebuilds looks different, feels different, but something else comes out of Andrew's destruction. Florida's building codes, already considered reasonably strong before the storm, are subjected to forensic investigation. What the investigation finds is deeply troubling. Widespread corner cutting during construction, roofs not properly anchored to walls, walls not properly anchored to foundations, garage doors installed without adequate reinforcement, buildings that were supposed to be hurricane resistant but were built quickly, cheaply, and with minimal oversight. The investigation estimates that construction deficiencies are responsible for a significant portion of the damage Andrew inflicts, damage that proper building practices would have prevented. The result is the most sweeping overhaul of building codes in Florida's history. The high-velocity hurricane zone standards, a set of construction requirements among the strictest in the world, are created specifically in response to what Andrew reveals. Every new home built in South Florida after Andrew is stronger, more hurricane-resistant, more likely to survive the next storm. Hurricane Andrew is the reason the buildings standing in South Florida today are not the buildings that stood in August 1992. Hurricane Andrew exposed weaknesses that no one thought existed. In forecasting, in preparation, in infrastructure, and in the belief that it couldn't happen here. Because Andrew didn't just break records, it broke assumptions. It proved that under the right conditions, a storm doesn't have to follow expectations. It doesn't have to weaken. It doesn't have to turn away. Sometimes it goes exactly where it shouldn't. And when it does, there's nothing left to stop it. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I make these videos because stories like this shouldn't be forgotten. Not just the storm, but the people who lived through it. So if you want to see more of this, you can support